The waning light, soft as aged parchment, draped the world in hues of muted gold as Caroline, a widow navigating the quiet expanse of her late 50s, rode her gleaming chrome motorcycle down a solitary road. The wind, a constant companion, whispered against her weathered cheeks, carrying echoes of old memories and the persistent, tender belief that even in solitude, something lay waiting for her down the path. Her journey wasn't about speed or destination. It was a rhythmic communion with the road, a dance of steel and spirit that had become her most cherished ritual since the world had shifted beneath her feet. Her home, a small, meticulously maintained cottage, remained a silent testament to a life once shared. Dust motes, caught in the afternoon sunbeams, danced in the air, performing a ballet in rooms where laughter had once resonated. Now, only the gentle ticking of a grandfather clock, a gift from her husband years ago, marked the passage of time. Each morning she would rise, the familiar ache of absence a dull throb beneath her ribs, and make 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, steeped strong and black, and another, left untouched on the worn oak table, a silent offering to a ghost. Her husband's vintage leather jacket, still carrying the faint scent of worn leather and his subtle cologne, hung on a hook by the door, a sentinel guarding countless unshared mornings. Sometimes she would trace the embroidery on its back, a stylized eagle soaring above winding roads, her gnarled fingers remembering the feel of his broad shoulders beneath the fabric. This ritual, born of a heart clinging to fragments, was her anchor in a sea of silent days. Life outside the cottage, however, often mirrored the silence within. On her rare trips into town, perhaps for a spare part for her beloved bike or groceries, the world moved with an impatient haste that seemed to deliberately overlook her. At the bustling market, her careful selection of ripe tomatoes often went unnoticed. As younger patrons were served with a swiftness she no longer experienced. Her attempts at a polite good morning were often met with hurried nods or worse, an almost invisible flicker of impatience in the eyes of clerks. Once, waiting patiently at a bank teller's window, she overheard a whispered comment about elderly folks holding up the line, a sting that settled deep within her, confirming the chilling reality of her newfound invisibility. She wasn't just a woman alone, she was a landscape unseen, a melody unheard in a world rushing past. A flicker of memory, sharp and sudden, would sometimes cut through the mundane. The last time she'd seen his eyes, a laugh line creased at the corner, reflecting the endless highway they'd just conquered. The memory of his warm hand covering hers as they shared a meal by a roaring fire, the taste of his favorite campfire coffee, the subtle fragrance of pine and exhaust clinging to their clothes. Then the jarring image of an emergency, room's stark white walls, the sterile scent replacing the rich earthiness of their adventures. A memory, once a source of comfort, now pierced her with the raw sorrow of what was irrevocably gone. Each such flashback was a reminder of the chasm between the vibrant before and the quiet now, a chasm she crossed daily, propelled forward only by the silent hum of her motorcycle's engine and the faint, persistent hope that the road still held lessons she was yet to learn. Suddenly, a disturbance rippled through the golden hush of the late afternoon. Ahead, a car stood motionless by the roadside, its hood propped open like a wounded bird's wing, a thin plume of smoke curling lazily into the vast sky. Caroline, her eyes keen from years of navigating unpredictable roads, instinctively slowed her bike, the rumble of its engine softening to a gentle purr before she cut it entirely. The sudden silence, broken only by the distant call of a solitary bird, felt profound. A woman, her silhouette, etched against the setting sun, was visible beside the vehicle. Her movements agitated, a clear sign of distress. She fumbled with the engine, her attempts visibly futile. Caroline, a silent observer for a moment, noted the weary slump of the woman's shoulders, the frantic gestures betraying a frustration that went beyond a mere mechanical failure. It was the universal posture of someone wrestling with an unseen burden. "Need a hand." Caroline's voice, a steady, calm cadence, cut through the quiet, surprising the woman. She removed her helmet, revealing a silver cascade of hair that danced lightly in the gentle breeze, framing a face etched with the quiet wisdom of lived years. Her eyes, deep-set and compassionate, held a glimmer of understanding that instantly disarmed the stranger. The woman spun around, startled, a hand flying to her chest. Her breath hitched. "Oh, I think the engine's dead, and I don't know what to do." Her voice was thin, almost trembling, betraying a fragility that tugged at Caroline's seasoned heart. The car wasn't just a broken machine, it was a symbol of her breaking point. Caroline approached, her steps unhurried, a familiar scent of oil and gasoline clinging faintly to her leather vest. She surveyed the engine with a practiced eye, her gaze lingering on a loose connection, a simple oversight. A discreet, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "Looks like it's just asking for a little patience," she murmured, her tone infused with a gentle humor, just like life often does. She didn't condescend, she simply offered a shared truth. As Caroline's hands, strong and knowing, began to work on the car's stubborn heart, the woman watched in silence, a strange mix of relief and something deeper playing across her features. Her initial surprise softened into a quiet observation, her eyes fixed not just on the task at hand, but on Caroline herself. The effortless confidence, the quiet focus, the way her hands moved with a familiar grace around the cold metal. It was a dance of competence, a rare sight for someone feeling so utterly adrift. Then a quiet confession broke the spell of the humming twilight. "You know, it's strange," the woman began, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking secrets to the fading light. "I was actually leaving home. I thought no one would even notice I was gone." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain, a stark revelation that went far beyond a simple car breakdown. It was a plea to be seen, a quiet cry for acknowledgement. Caroline paused, her hands resting momentarily on the engine. She lifted her gaze, meeting the woman's eyes with a profound depth of empathy. "And why did you decide to leave?" she asked, her voice soft, devoid of judgment, inviting a vulnerability that seemed to yearn for release. "Because I grew tired of waiting for people to see me," the woman replied, her voice tinged with a raw, weary resignation. "To truly see me, not just the role I played." It was a familiar ache, one Caroline recognized deep within her own soul. Caroline leaned back against the car, taking a slow, measured breath, the scent of warm oil and dust filling her lungs. "Sometimes," she mused, her voice carrying the gentle weight of experience, "it's the road that forces us to see ourselves first." She paused, allowing the words to settle between them, a bridge forming in the shared vulnerability. "I left one day too, not because anyone had forgotten me, but because I needed to remember who I truly was." Her words were not a claim of superiority, but a testament to a shared journey, a silent understanding passing between two souls on the cusp of an unspoken connection. The woman lowered her gaze, emotion flickering in her eyes. "And did you find what you were looking for?" she asked, her voice thick with a longing for an answer that transcended the simple narrative. Caroline considered her words carefully, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. "I found the silence, and within it," she finally answered, her gaze drifting towards the horizon where the last vestiges of daylight bled into the twilight, "I discovered that solitude can teach what love sometimes forgets to say." It was a profound statement, a distillation of years of quiet contemplation and hard-won wisdom. At that moment, as if in agreement with Caroline's quiet declaration, the car engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life, a triumphant sound piercing the lingering silence. Caroline wiped her hands on a rag, the practical task completed. Yet the woman seemed to hesitate, lingering, as if the mechanical fix was merely a prelude to a deeper exchange she wasn't ready to end. "I don't know how to thank you," the woman said, her voice imbued with a gratitude that went beyond the immediate favor. "You don't need to," Caroline replied, a gentle shake of her head. "The road is generous to those who learn to listen to its hum." Her words implied a reciprocity that transcended monetary exchange. Then, with a gesture both spontaneous and deeply meaningful, the woman reached into her pocket. She pulled out a simple necklace, a small heart-shaped pendant resting on a thin silver chain. "Keep this," she said, pressing it into Caroline's hand. "It was given to me by someone who used to say that wounded hearts recognize each other on the road." Her gaze, raw with unspoken emotions, conveyed a recognition of shared scars, a silent pact of understanding. Caroline accepted the gift, the cool metal of the pendant a tangible link between them. The gesture, so unexpected, touched a place deep within her, a dormant corner of her heart that resonated with the woman's words. They shared a brief, meaningful embrace, a silent affirmation of connection that spoke volumes more than any words could. The woman then climbed into her now purring car, driving off into the deepening twilight, leaving behind only the distant drone of her engine and a faint swirl of golden dust. Caroline stood there for a moment, the necklace resting in her palm, its subtle weight a new presence. The wind gusted, as if urging her onward, calling her to a new destination, an unseen path. She mounted her motorcycle, her posture now subtly different, a renewed sense of purpose stirring within her. The road stretched out before her, an infinite ribbon unwinding into the encroaching night, and each curve seemed to whisper something new, something profound. As she rode, the woman's words, about being seen, about leaving, about new beginnings, played in her mind, a quiet symphony of introspection. That night, arriving home, she carefully hung the delicate necklace over her mirror. As she watched her reflection, for the first time in years she felt she wasn't merely remembering the past, but truly releasing herself from its unwavering grip, embracing the present with a newfound openness. A soft, genuine smile bloomed on her face. "The road is indeed generous," she murmured, the words a gentle echo in the quiet room. She turned on the radio, its soft melody filling the air, and her motorcycle waited patiently outside, ready for the next unknown horizon. Caroline knew, with a certainty that hummed in her bones, that somewhere along the path she would cross another's way, someone who needed to hear the very truth she had learned, that sometimes helping another is the most beautiful way to rediscover oneself. The small, heart-shaped pendant, now a permanent fixture around Caroline's neck, became more than just a memento. It was a tactile reminder of the unexpected encounter, a silent catalyst for a subtle shift within her. Its cool weight against her skin served as a constant invitation to introspection, a gentle prod from the road itself. The words exchanged with the stranger, about being seen and finding oneself in solitude, had struck a deep chord, resonating with her own unspoken yearnings. The quiet of her cottage, once a sanctuary of sorrow, now felt infused with a different kind of silence, one pregnant with possibility, rather than just absence. One afternoon, while meticulously polishing the chrome on her own motorcycle, her gaze fell upon a dusty corner of her garage. Tucked away beneath a tarp, long forgotten, sat a neglected frame, the skeletal remains of her husband's first bike, a vintage model he had cherished but never fully restored. He had often spoken of their plans to work on it together, project for their golden years, a tangible symbol of their shared passion. After his passing, the sight of it had been too painful, a stark reminder of dreams unfulfilled. It had been easier to cover it, to pretend it didn't exist, rather than confront the ghost of their shared future. Now, however, the necklace seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, urging her to look closer. With hands that trembled slightly, she pulled back the tarp, revealing the rust-pitted metal and faded paint. The smell of old grease and dormant possibility filled the air. It wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a vessel of memories, a forgotten promise. A spark, long dormant, ignited within her. This wasn't just about fixing a machine, it was about rebuilding a piece of her past, transforming grief into purpose, honoring a legacy not through mourning but through action. With a determination she hadn't felt in years, Caroline began the painstaking process of restoration. The old tools, once neatly organized in her husband's toolbox, now lay scattered on her workbench, their familiar weight a comfort in her hands. She started with the engine, carefully dismantling each part, cleaning away years of neglect, her fingers remembering the subtle nuances of each component, the metallic tang of oil, the sharp scent of solvents, the gritty feel of rust, all became a symphony of sensory engagement. Each turn of a wrench, each gentle tap of a hammer, was a meditation, a conversation with the machine, and with the man who had loved it. Flashbacks, no longer painful stings, now flowed like gentle currents. She remembered her husband patiently teaching her the mechanics of an engine, his large hands guiding her smaller ones, his infectious laughter echoing in the garage as she inevitably smeared grease on her nose. She recalled the pride in his eyes when she successfully diagnosed a problem he'd overlooked. These memories, once heavy with loss, now felt tender, infused with a bittersweet warmth. The restoration wasn't just bringing the motorcycle back to life, it was bringing a part of her back to life too. Her dormant mechanical talent, once a shared hobby, now blossomed into a quiet, solitary passion. The garage, once a silent tomb of sorrow, became her sanctuary, a space where time seemed to fold in on itself. Hours would pass unnoticed as she meticulously sanded rusted parts, painstakingly rewired frayed connections, and carefully applied layers of primer. The soft glow of her work, light illuminated her concentrated face, her brow furrowed in concentration, her hands moving with an almost surgical precision. The physical labor, demanding and intricate, provided a much-needed anchor, pulling her away from the eddies of melancholic introspection and into the tangible world of nuts, bolts, and pistons. Her initial reward was purely internal, the quiet satisfaction of a polished chrome piece gleaming under the light, the smooth rotation of a freshly lubricated gear, the rhythmic thrum of an engine cylinder responding to her touch. Each small victory, each component successfully repaired, brought a surge of quiet triumph, a validation of her skill and resilience. It wasn't an external applause she sought, but the deep, resonant hum of competence returning, a gentle affirmation from within. The project wasn't just a distraction, it was a rebirth, a tangible manifestation of her capacity to create, to mend, to bring beauty out of decay. She realized, with a clarity that settled deep in her bones, that the silent work of restoration was also the work of healing her own fractured spirit. The motorcycle, once a symbol of what was lost, was slowly, painstakingly, becoming a testament to what could be rebuilt. And with each piece meticulously fitted, each engine hum coaxed back to life, Caroline felt her own heart too begin to mend, finding rhythm and purpose in the quiet, honest labor of her hands. The hum of the newly restored engine, a deep, resonant purr that filled Caroline's garage, was a balm to her soul. The motorcycle, now gleaming with renewed life, stood as a testament to her perseverance, a symbol of a promise fulfilled. Yet, the profound satisfaction it brought stirred a new, unexpected yearning within her, a desire not just to create for herself, but to extend this quiet magic of restoration outwards. The necklace, still resting against her skin, reminded her of the woman on the road, of the shared vulnerability, and of the profound truth that sometimes the greatest healing comes from giving. One afternoon, while picking up a specialized lubricant from a small local garage, she observed a young man, barely out of his teens, struggling with a stubborn carburetor. His brow was furrowed with frustration, his hands smudged with grease, and his shoulders carried the weight of impending defeat. He was an apprentice, clearly earnest, but lacking the seasoned touch that often separates a mechanic from an artisan. Caroline saw not just a struggling young man, but a reflection of her own early struggles and perhaps a flicker of the same weariness she'd seen in the eyes of the woman on the road, the silent plea to be seen, to be guided. She hesitated, her old instinct to remain unseen whispering at the edges of her awareness, but the subtle weight of the heart-shaped pendant, a warm presence against her skin, urged her forward. "May I?" she asked gently, her voice cutting through the clang of metal. The young man, startled, looked up, his eyes a mixture of surprise and slight defensiveness. He was about to decline, but something in Caroline's calm, knowing gaze, perhaps the quiet confidence radiating from her, made him pause. He simply nodded, stepping back, a silent invitation to a seasoned eye. Caroline approached the engine, her movements deliberate and graceful. She didn't critique or lecture, she simply observed, her gaze moving over the components with an almost tender familiarity. Her gnarled fingers, practiced and precise, pointed to a minuscule crack almost invisible to the untrained eye. "It's often the smallest fissure that creates the greatest tremor," she murmured, her voice soft but authoritative. Then, with a few quiet adjustments, a delicate twist of a small tool, the carburetor, once defiant, responded with a soft click. The engine, when tested, purred with a newfound efficiency. The young man, whose name she soon learned was Finn, stared in awe, his earlier frustration replaced by a wide-eyed wonder. "How did you—" he began, trailing off, unable to articulate his amazement. Caroline simply offered a gentle smile. "Years of listening," she said, her eyes twinkling with a shared secret. "Machines, like people, often tell you what they need if you only quiet yourself enough to hear." This small act, this unsolicited offering of her time and expertise, became the first thread in a nascent tapestry of connection. From that day forward, Caroline began to visit the garage more frequently, not as a customer but as a silent mentor. She didn't intrude, she simply made herself available, observing, offering quiet advice, demonstrating techniques with a patient grace that Finn absorbed like dry earth drinks rain. She noticed that Finn often skipped meals, his enthusiasm for learning overriding his basic needs. One afternoon, she brought a batch of her homemade oatmeal cookies, the scent of cinnamon and warmth filling the dusty garage. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes, offering comfort and care beyond just mechanical instruction. Finn, initially wary, slowly opened up to her. He shared his dreams of opening his own repair shop, his struggles with balancing work and an ailing parent, his fears of not being good enough. Caroline listened, truly listened, with a patience and empathy he rarely encountered. She didn't offer quick fixes or empty reassurances. She offered validation, her quiet presence a steady anchor in his turbulent young life. She taught him not just about engines, but about the quiet dignity of honest work, the importance of meticulous attention to detail, and the profound satisfaction of helping something, or someone, run smoothly again. The transformation in Finn was palpable. His initial frustration gave way to a focused determination, his hesitant movements replaced by a growing confidence. The reciprocity in their connection was subtle but powerful. Finn, in turn, began to show her small kindnesses. He would carry heavy parts for her, insist on making her tea, and often shared stories of his day, his youthful energy breathing a new kind of vibrancy into Caroline's life. Their shared moments in the garage, surrounded by the scent of oil and metal, became a haven of intergenerational connection, a quiet defiance against the world's indifference. Caroline found that in helping Finn nurture his own dormant talent, she was nurturing a part of herself, allowing her own wisdom to flow outwards, finding new purpose in the act of giving. It was a profound realization. Her healing wasn't a solitary journey, but a communal one, intrinsically linked to the well-being of those around her. The silent solace of her solitary rides now felt balanced by the shared rhythm of mentorship, the quiet hum of her own heart beating in sync with the pulse of another's burgeoning dream. The subtle ripple of Caroline's presence in the small, unassuming garage began to spread, slowly, almost imperceptibly, through the tight-knit community. Her quiet competence, once confined to her own sanctuary, now radiated outwards, transforming not only Finn, but also the way the world began to perceive her. The garage owner, a gruff but fair man named Silas, initially viewed Caroline's frequent visits with a skeptical eye, accustomed to the transient nature of passers-by. He saw her as just another elderly woman seeking distraction, but over weeks, his observations chipped away at his preconceptions. He witnessed Finn's remarkable transformation, the newfound precision in his work, the spark of enthusiasm in his eyes, the decrease in his frustrated sighs. Silas saw the quiet way Caroline would demonstrate a tricky maneuver, her hands moving with an almost artistic grace, or the patient manner in which she'd explain a complex engine diagram. The aroma of her homemade cookies, a simple act of kindness, also often wafted through the garage, softening the sterile metallic air and warming the atmosphere. Silas, a man of few words but sharp perceptions, began to acknowledge her with more than just a perfunctory nod. He would offer her a fresh cup of coffee, brewed strong and black, or engage her in brief, respectful conversations about a particularly challenging repair. He witnessed how customers, drawn by Finn's improved service and perhaps by the comforting presence of Caroline, would linger a little longer, their hurried demeanors giving way to a more relaxed pace. The garage, once purely a transactional space, began to feel like a small hub of community, infused with an unexpected warmth. Caroline's circle of influence expanded beyond the garage. Word spread, quiet as a whispered secret, about the motorcycle woman with the wise hands and kind eyes. A neighbor whose vintage scooter had been stubbornly refusing to start hesitantly approached Caroline for advice. Caroline, with her characteristic quiet observation, diagnosed the issue within minutes, offering a simple, practical solution. Another time, a young woman new to the area and nervous about a long road trip stopped by the garage, drawn by its newfound reputation. Caroline patiently walked her through basic maintenance checks, shared tips for safe riding, and even packed her a small bag of trail mix, a gesture of maternal care that bridged the gap between strangers. In these interactions, Caroline no longer felt invisible. When faced with an occasional impatient glance or a dismissive tone, she would respond with a quiet dignity, her gaze steady and unwavering. Armed now with an internal sense of value that disarmed indifference, her voice, once hushed by sorrow, carried the conviction of her experience, a gentle authority that commanded respect without demanding it. The world, once a hurried, indifferent blur, now seemed to slow down in her presence, acknowledging her, seeing her. The small, heart-shaped necklace which had initiated this journey of outward connection became a central element in this transformation. It was no longer a symbol of shared vulnerability with just one stranger, but a growing emblem of her expanding connections. One day, while working on a neighbor's bike, she noticed a loose clasp on the necklace. Instead of simply tightening it, she carefully resoldered it, fortifying its strength, much like she was fortifying her own connections. The act of mending it, of reinforcing its structure, mirrored the internal work she had done on herself. The necklace, once a private token of an encounter, now openly embraced the vibrant story of her present, a tangible link between her past grief and her blossoming purpose. It was a quiet testament to the idea that some bonds, like some hearts, grow stronger and more resilient, not despite their initial brokenness, but precisely because of the gentle, painstaking care invested in their repair. The annual community bike rally arrived, a vibrant spectacle of roaring engines and polished chrome that drew enthusiasts from miles around. This year, however, held a special significance for Caroline. Her fully restored vintage motorcycle, the one that had been a silent monument to her grief, now sat proudly on display, its metallic surfaces gleaming under the crisp autumn sun. Beside it stood Finn's own motorcycle, meticulously prepared, a testament to his burgeoning skill, a visible sign of her quiet tutelage. The air thrummed with excitement, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude that had once defined Caroline's existence. Finn, his face flushed with youthful pride, stood beside their bikes, his eyes shining as he chatted animatedly with fellow riders. Suddenly, a microphone crackled to life, and Silas, the gruff garage owner, stepped onto a small makeshift stage. His gaze swept over the crowd, finally resting on Caroline, who stood quietly at the edge, a subtle smile playing on her lips. "Every year, we celebrate the spirit of the road," Silas's voice boomed, softened by an uncharacteristic warmth. "But this year we're also celebrating the spirit of connection. I want to acknowledge someone who has quietly, profoundly changed our little corner of the world. Someone who reminds us that wisdom isn't just about age, but about generosity of spirit and the willingness to share. Caroline," he paused, his gaze meeting hers, a silent public apology for his earlier indifference. "Thank you for your quiet strength, your incredible talent, and for showing us all that a true community is built. One kind act, one shared lesson at a time." Applause erupted, genuine and heartfelt, a wave of recognition washing over Caroline. Finn, beaming, approached her, wrapping her in a warm embrace. "You helped me see what was possible," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. The moment was a powerful visual contrast to the solitary figure of the past, polishing chrome in her quiet garage. Here, she was at the heart of a vibrant community, her presence radiating warmth, her eyes reflecting the genuine joy of being seen, truly seen for the first time in years. Later that afternoon, Caroline noticed Finn, now full of confidence, kneeling beside a younger child, explaining the workings of a small scooter engine, his patience mirroring her own. The child's eyes, wide with curiosity, reflected the same spark she had seen in Finn's. The circle of kindness, initiated by a chance encounter on a lonely road, was quietly, beautifully continuing. The lessons of generosity, of sharing one's dormant wisdom, were being passed on, a silent legacy blooming in the unexpected places. The small, heart-shaped necklace, visible against Caroline's chest, seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, a testament to the enduring power of human connection, a beacon for all who sought to mend not just machines, but hearts. The final scene returned to Caroline's cottage, but the silence was no longer that of emptiness. It was a silence imbued with peace, with a resonant hum of purpose fulfilled and connections forged. The grandfather clock still ticked, but its rhythm now felt like a steady heartbeat, a comforting pulse in a home that had fully embraced its present. The afternoon sun, filtering through the window, no longer illuminated dust motes dancing in a void, but rather highlighted a small, vibrant potted plant on the windowsill, a gift from Finn, a symbol of new growth, nurtured by shared care. The road, as Caroline had discovered, was indeed a generous teacher. It had not erased her pain, nor had it demanded she forget. Instead, it had gently guided her to understand that the deepest healing comes not from avoidance, but from integration. Her journey, sparked by a quiet confession on a deserted highway and fueled by the rediscovery of a dormant skill, had woven a new tapestry for her life, rich with unexpected threads of connection and kindness. She had learned that grief, like an old engine, can be meticulously stripped down, cleaned and rebuilt, not into its original form, but into something new, stronger and more purposeful. And she finally understood. The most beautiful journeys are not those without detours, but those where every unexpected stop, every quiet conversation, teaches the heart to mend its scars, growing stronger and more vibrant because of them. Her own story was a living testament. Her heart had not healed by forgetting, but by finding new reasons to remember how to love, both herself and the world around her, through the simple, profound act of giving. This was the dawn of her soul. If her story watered something within you, leave a blossom in the comments so we know you're here. Tell us what you learned. Don't let your own story wither in silence.